Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us. I am Matthew Silverman, the director of the Haberman Institute, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to our lecture with Saul Lilienstein, who will be exploring Leonard Bernstein's Jewish music. Saul studied with Leonard Bernstein, and tonight presents a special opportunity to learn with someone with firsthand experience working with the renowned musician. Thank you to our generous supporters for sponsoring this lecture. Rabbi Janet Ozerbass in memory of her mother, Norma Ozer, Harvey and Patty Iglarsh, and Mary Hammer in memory of Arnold Hammer. We also extend our gratitude to Andrew R. Ammerman for sponsoring our winter 2025 lecture series. Andrew dedicates the semester's learning in loving memory of Josephine and H. Max Ammerman and Stephen C. Ammerman. Sponsoring lectures is a meaningful way to honor or remember a loved one or to mark a significant occasion, such as a yard site, a personal or professional achievement, or a milestone celebration. Your sponsorship donations, as well as contributions at all levels, allow us to continue offering these lectures free of charge for all participants. For more information on how to get involved, please visit our website. Join us for our next program on January 27th with Professor Stephen Windmuller, who will be discussing 21st century Judaism. Professor Windmuller is an excellent teacher and scholar who will help enrich our understanding of contemporary Jewish life, filled with new opportunities and, unfortunately, new or renewed challenges. And now back to tonight's lecture. As always, feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A button on your Zoom screen. Kindly keep your questions concise and in complete sentences. We will address them at the end of the lecture, but feel free to submit them at any time during the presentation. The program tonight will be filled with audio and video, and our sound is at the highest settings on our end. So if I'm a little bit soft right now to you, I would recommend going ahead and turning up your volume on your screen as high as or high enough that I sound clear, and it'll make for a better presentation. And before I conclude, I also want to thank Beth, Saul's spouse, who is running the PowerPoint next to him. And so with that, it is now my pleasure to welcome Mary Hammer, one of tonight's sponsors, who will say a few words and introduce our speaker. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much. Welcome, friends near and far, those who have been familiar with the programs of the Institute, the Haberman Institute, and those who are new. Tonight's program, Leonard Bernstein's Jewish Roots, A Musical Journey, will be one I think you'll find interesting. The Institute's mission is to deliver high-quality, in-depth encounters with Jewish thought, culture, and history, as tonight's talk surely will. I've sponsored this program in memory of my husband, Arnold Hammer. Arnie had a long career in labor law and a long relationship with Eretz Israel as a leader. When he retired, Arnie volunteered at the Hebrew Home of Greater Washington and spent many years on the board and as president of the foundation for 3 years. He enjoyed these activities because his love of Judaism and lifelong learning. It provided him great satisfaction, especially during his retirement years, with lectures, Jewish travel adventures, and other mind-stretching experiences. This led to a special friendship with founder Rabbi Joshua Haberman and his wife, Maxine, a bonus for both of us. And now I am honored to introduce tonight's speaker, Saul Lilienstein. He was a former student of Leonard Bernstein and holds a BA and MS degrees in music from Queens College. Lilienstein was for many years the artistic director and conductor of Maryland's Hartford Opera Theater and then the Operetta Renaissance in Baltimore. conducting and producing over 50 operas. He initially came to the attention of Maryland audiences as director of music for the Handel Choir of Baltimore and the Hartford Choral Society. Concurrently and continuing over the decades, Saul was the hidden presence in the choir loft of the Hizikamuna congregation of Baltimore, directing the music. Today, he continues as a highly regarded professor of music in the Washington area. His is a familiar voice at the Smithsonian Institution, Johns Hopkins University, at the Goethe Institute, for symphonic concerts at the Kennedy Center, opera lectures for the Washington National Opera, and at music symposiums in New York, Boston, San Francisco, and Palm Beach. Lilienstein's subjects range from the origins of opera to the origins of jazz, from Bach to Beethoven, to the music of the Gypsies, from immigrant cultures to music of the Beatles. Happily, I heard many of these lectures when I was a student at OSHER, the Institute for Learning and Retirement. He has now completed over 85 highly acclaimed commentaries on CDs for the Washington National Opera, analyzing the repertoire in the most extensive series of its kind in the English language. Lilienstein's essays on music have appeared in newspapers throughout the country, in journals and anthologies. We are delighted to learn from you again tonight, Saul. I thank you for sharing your research and insight with us. The Zoom box is yours. Thank you.
I have to thank you for that introduction. I must tell you that of all those links that you mentioned there, of things that I've done, the linkage that matters most to me tonight is the one with you and your late husband and Leonard Bernstein, and all the things that are so rich in Jewish history. That's the link that matters to me tonight. And I hope I'm able to convey how strongly those Jewish links mattered to Leonard Bernstein. You know, a lot of people today, especially the younger generation, knows of Bernstein through this movie, Maestro. It's a movie about a famous man and his troubled marriage. But the thing is that if one's knowledge of Bernstein depends on that movie, then you'd never know what a committed life he spent to Jewish, the Jewish religion and our shared Jewish culture. His own music and his love of the music of George Gershwin and Aaron Copland, and especially, you could say, Gustav Mahler, is a continuing artistic affirmation for him of this Jewish quality. Now, when he was a youngster, from the time he was 8 years old, he would attend services in Boston. It was the Mishkan Tefillah, where he went, and through his entire life, whenever he returned to his parents' home, there'd be a place on the bima there waiting for him. And when he looked back years later, in the 1960s, he wrote a letter to the Cantors Assembly. I like to read a short little excerpt from it. He wrote, before I ever heard a concert, recital, or opera, before I ever touched a piano or knew that an organized musical life existed, before all these I heard the music at Temple Mishkan Tefillah. I shall never forget that music, nor cease to be grateful for the power, conviction, and atmosphere which it was conveyed. This is the truth. That wasn't a ceremonial gesture, that letter. That is, Jewish culture has always mattered to Bernstein. In this program, I'm going to present that music that's lovingly filled with Yiddishkeit that he wrote. And also, I think there's strong evidence that that quality is what he found in the music of Gustav Mahler. Now, I'm going to do all of this basically in chronological order, but don't keep me to it, because here and there we'll go, back and forth. But I'll start at the beginning, which is the first extant piece of music that he ever wrote, which was a setting of the Psalm 148, praise the Lord, praise him on the earth and on the sea. And he set it for piano and voice, and he wrote it in 1935. He was 16, 17 years old. And you'll notice when you hear the beginning of this piece that the piano chords are borrowed actually from Wagner's Tannhäuser, and the piano continues and with really reminiscences of Schumann and other mid-19th century styles. None of it's going to be an indication of Bernstein's mature style, except for the fact that the music that you hear the soprano sing, you'll see that there's a love of romanticism in it, which was always part of Lenny's nature, and also his talent for lyrical melodies. That was there right from the beginning. And then we're going to just hear the first section, which ends with a return to the chromatic chords of the introduction. The performance was done in Japan that we're going to be listening to, and it was part of centennial celebrations of Bernstein's birth. Here it is. All right, let's stop. Okay, now it's very sweet music. I'd like to talk for a moment about Bernstein in the summer of 1937. He was a teenager, and he had a job as a camp counselor. Can you imagine what it must have been like to be in that camp and to have Lenny as your counselor? Can only imagine what those kids must have experienced, what they knew before we knew. Well, on this particular day, summer of 1937, it was, I think it might have been lunchtime. We all the kids in that big area eat round tables, all over the place. You know those situations. And Lenny got up to the microphone and he made an announcement. He said, "Today, America's greatest living Jewish composer has died. George Gershwin died that day. And he sat down at the piano and he played one of Gershwin's preludes for piano. And as he described it afterwards, he stood up and just walked through the group of people to the outside. And as he was walking, he said, I thought I was George Gershwin. Now, the reason I mention that is because it's a wonderful way that you can understand when you watch recordings of Bernstein conducting, that particular vibrancy of his conducting is he imagined when he was conducting that he was the conductor, creating that music on the spot. And that was in his mind when he conducted. Well, we're going to hear a piece of his written a little after that, and which, in fact, I think we'll see that his style as a musician what we recognize can be heard. And it is a performance of a work he wrote in the early 1940s, Symphony Number 1, and he labeled it Jeremiah Symphony. And there's text to it in two of the movements, Lamentations of Jeremiah. We're going to be listening to a movement in the middle, which has no text, and it was called Profanation. Well, you say, what is a profanation? Well, one kind of profanation is a secular treatment of a religious element. And that's what we're going to hear in this one. That is, profanation, by the way, does not necessarily mean desecration. It just means using it in a different way and in a secular way. And so what he does is he takes the certain nigun that every bar mitzvah boy learns. That is, the nigun are the indications right under words in the Hebrew of little musical indications, little small musical motifs. So, for instance, you'll recognize it. You look at it, all the bar mitzvah boys, at least in the Ashkenazic tradition, would be da-dee-dom, dee-dom, da-da-dee-da-da-dee-dom, dee-da-da-dom. You all recognize these da-da-dom. Those are the beginning of a Haftorah. Now, Bernstein took those exactly and put them together. Dum dee dum dum dee dum dum dee dum 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 dee dum. Only he gave it a different kind of a rhythm, which went bum ba dum bum bee dum bum ba dum ba dum bum bee. But it is the nigun. It is, right out of a Haftorah. And so we're going to listen to it. He's making it dance. He's making it almost as if it's like a wedding dance. Here is the opening of that second movement. He is conducting the Israeli Philharmonic. See if we can get that a little louder. It's, at least right here in my home, it was very soft. I'd love you to hear that opening. Let's try again. Well, I know I'm going to hear it now. I hope you can too. Here it goes. There it was. There it is. You know, some of that you might realize sounded like with Lower East Side, beginning of the 20th century, tomatoes are cheaper, potatoes are cheaper. You say, well, does that make it sacrilegious? No, not at all. Bernstein is dancing this music. Uh, he's in the fine tradition of King David, who danced before the Holy Ark. That's what Lenny is doing right here. And if you think of it, in the music, the Catholic music that Mozart he wrote it to be performed in churches that looked like theaters. And the music that he wrote for it, very similar to the music that he wrote for the operas. There's nothing sacrilegious about doing that either. Just think of it, by the way, that this music that he wrote here, that this is around the same time that on Broadway, he's having a success with the musical On the Town. Think about On the Town, that was 1944, 1945. Here is Bernstein is writing a Ashkivenu at the same time. And this is again a performance from that centennial celebration in Japan. Here's a couple of minutes of it. Ashkivenu. I really do love seeing those Japanese faces singing this music. Music really is universal. This has made as much sense to them as it makes to anyone who studies music and loves music and listens to it. That was 1945. The next year, Bernstein went on his first European tour. It was to Eastern Europe, and he made his debut conducting the Czech Philharmonic. That was his European debut as a conductor, 1946. But I'd like to speak about another moment of that year when the woman who was in charge of shepherding him around, it was a Polish Jewish film actress who was married to the American, the agent from America who organized the tour. And it was her job to take Bernstein from one place to another. And when they got to Warsaw, Bernstein said, I want to go to the ghetto. And she says, I'm going to speak in her voice a little bit here. I don't mean in any way to sound, imitative, but only because I met her, you see, 30 years later, and she told me about this incident. And she said, you don't want to go to the ghetto. Yes, he said, I do. I want to go there. And so you come there. And she led him through the streets of the ghetto, which she, as a youngster, would shepherd little children and try to hide them. And I saw in Leonard where we went to find little cubicles where they could hide from the Nazis. She said, Leonard, listen to me. You have to stop crying. If you cry, you'll never understand what I'm telling you. And he said to me, I want to dance. I said, what, you want to dance? He says, yes. I want you and I should, right here in the ghetto, we should dance. I want us to dance a Jewish dance, a horror right here. She says, and so we did. Leonard Bernstein and I dancing the horror in the streets of Warsaw. All right. In 1947, he was in Tel Aviv, and he's conducted there for the first time, and it began a lifelong association. He was there, conducting the Israeli Philharmonic. It was called the Palestine Symphony at the time. And he conducted an open-air concert for Israeli troops in Beersheba in the middle of the desert during the Arab-Israeli War. There's a picture of him there. Will be our next slide. Yes, there he is, young Leonard, as that wonderful woman had said to me. She called him Leonard. All right, and there is a film of him in the desert at that time, and I'd like you to see that now.
My first encounter with the Israel Philharmonic occurred at a time when its name was the Palestine Symphony Orchestra. It was an incredible encounter. We all seemed to feel with this first program that it was the beginning of a long relationship. It's one of those things we just always knew.
Israel, I think, meant to Bernstein his roots. It was the earth and the people from whom he felt that he was a living descendant. And he was there at every crucial moment, and it was always his gift to Israel. I mean, he always conducted for free there.
When I was there in 48, the war had broken out because naturally the day that the State of Israel was declared, they were attacked simultaneously from 6 sides. And on the day they became a nation at war. I played for the troops a lot, and sometimes the orchestra couldn't go or wouldn't go. I went behind lines and played for the commandos, the Palmach.
3 days after Beersheba was conquered, Lenny took the orchestra to the desert, and 5,000 soldiers were there. The people were sitting in chairs, but on the rocks.
Wow. Now, 1950s. The 1950s were in many ways the most productive decade of his life. It was the beginning of the CBS TV series. Many of you saw those. Those are the series of adults and children that educated a nation about classical music. He had, over the course of those 10 years, he had 4 different shows on Broadway, including, of course, West Side Story. He was in Hollywood. The film On the Waterfront has this magnificent score that he wrote. And some of you know it from the movie, but the suite of music, On the Waterfront Suite, is a terrific piece all by itself, written at that time. And he wrote one opera, Trouble in Tahiti, and he wrote an operetta, Candide. And for a moment, I'd just like to go to a section in Candide. I think you'll find that's really, I hope you'll find it interesting. It treats, it's a song for a person who's only called the old lady. And what she sings is a song called I Am Easily Assimilated. She treats a modern problem very lightly here. One of the first things she says in this is, my father came from Rovno Gubernia, and Rovno Gubernia just happens to be the Rovno Gubernia just happens to be the little shtetl in the Ukraine where Bernstein's father was born, Rovno Gubernia. He had the text that says he stuck it in for the old lady to sing. Here is Crystal Ludwig singing that music with Lenny conducting it.
My father came from Rovno Gubernia, but now I'm here, I'm dancing a tango. Die, I am easily assimilated. I am so easily assimilated. I never spoke a human language. My father spoke a high middle Polish. In 1/2 hour I'm talking in Spanish. Por favor, Toreador, I am easily assimilated. I am so easily assimilated. It's easy, it's ever so easy. I'm Spanish, I'm suddenly Spanish. And you must be Spanish too. Do like the natives do. These days you have to be in the majority.
if you never thought there was such a thing as a Jewish tango, there it was. Or the next year, 1957, he was in Israel conducting the inauguration of a new concert hall in Tel Aviv. And immediately following that, he is in New York, where he is appointed the music director of the New York Philharmonic, and he immediately takes them on a world tour. We don't need any pictures yet, dear.
No, I know.
All right, now, this was Bernstein in the 1950s, so did I leave anything out? Well, he got married. He had 2 of his 3 children, and what I really left out is what he left out, which is symphonic music. He didn't write any, other than you could say the suite out of the music for the film On the Waterfront. And that's why, after 11 years, he resigned from the New York Philharmonic to have more time to compose. But he did spend most of the time anyway conducting all over the world. All right. In early 1963, 2 days after the death of JFK, Bernstein conducted the New York Philharmonic in Mahler's Second Symphony. The next day was the day of the United Jewish Appeal, Greater New York. And it was their fundraising event, and it became a memorial, for the president who had just been killed. And Bernstein was there and invited to speak. And among other things, he began by quoting some lines from Kennedy about the Judaic tradition of learning and reason. And then Bernstein continued, "These are the twin sources from which every Jewish mind, from Abraham and Moses to Freud and Einstein, have drawn living power." And in his own words, let me find the rest of them, he says, "This will be my reply to violence, to make music more intensely, more beautifully, more devotedly than ever before. And with each note, we will honor the spirit of John Kennedy and commemorate his courage and reaffirm his faith in the triumph of the mind." 1 month later, Bernstein's Kaddish Symphony premiered in Tel Aviv. We're going to hear a short excerpt from that symphony. We're going to hear a performance done in 1985 in Vienna. It's a Vienna youth choir singing it, and it is an orchestra of youth. It's the European Youth Orchestra that is playing it. Bernstein is conducting. The words of the narration, there's a narration in this as well. The narration, in a very old biblical tradition, argues with God. And as Bernstein described it, he said it was with a certain respectful fury. But we'll hear 2 excerpts on the final movement, and that fury is past, the fever is past, and it becomes the music of reconciliation and a text of reconciliation as well. The narrator's name is Michael Wager. Here is that excerpt.
Dawn is chilly. But the dawn has come. Father, we've won another day. We have dreamed our Kaddish and wakened alive. Good morning, Father. We can still be immortal, you and I, bound by our rainbow. That is our covenant, and to honor it is our honor. Not quite the covenant we bargained for so long ago, at the time of that other first rainbow. But then I was only your helpless infant, arms hard around you, dead without you. We've both grown older, you and I am not sad, and you must not be sad. Unfurrow your brow. Look tenderly again at me, at us, at all these children of God, here in this sacred house, and we shall look tenderly back to you. Oh, my Father, Lord of light, beloved Majesty, my image, myself. We are one after all, you and I. Together we suffer, together exist, and forever we'll recreate each other. Recreate each other. Suffer and recreate each other.
Well, that Bernstein is struggling to get out of the despair of the moment. In this last movement, he's going to end this symphony in celebration. And with Bernstein's favorite klezmer dance rhythms. The text is Oseh Shalom B'Molov. In other words, a text which is the conclusion of the Kaddish. I don't think you'll understand the words because it's in fugal form where the words overlap each other, one part after another. And besides, it's these Vienna choir boys, singing the Jewish. So who knows? Anyway, here it is, the ending of this Kaddish Symphony. 5 years later, Robert Kennedy was assassinated. Funeral services were held at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, and Bernstein conducted the New York Philharmonic in a performance of the Adagietto from Symphony No. 5 by Gustav Mahler. Earlier, I had mentioned that to understand Bernstein's conducting is to realize that he imagines himself composing the music as the music is going on. As we listen to this excerpt, it's the ending of the Adagietto. I think you'll hear it's two people. It's Bernstein. It's Mahler. Both united, as if there is no time span between them, no death. Two people, one musical thought. Here's the conclusion to the Adagietto. Between those sorrowful events, Bernstein was in Israel just after the Six-Day War. And whenever he went to Israel, he felt like he was coming home. Look at this short excerpt of how he felt. You can just see it in his face and in every sound he makes as he's returning to Israel after the Six-Day War.
To go to the Wailing Wall was very moving for him. And the joy he felt, the pride he felt, as did everybody, in this incredible six-day victory. It was extraordinary. It was like a dream come true. and was suddenly to see East Jerusalem and be able to walk in it.
Lenny had basic loyalties. One was to Israel, which was in his blood, in his cells, and he gave of himself unstintingly there in a way that they will never forget.
Bei den Davenen will ich mich schocken, machen allerlei Hawaii, machen allerlei Hawaii.
I didn't do that.
You didn't?
No, let it go on. I did this.
My first encounter with the Israel Philharmonic occurred at a time when its name was the Palestine Symphony Orchestra.
Boy. By the way, that little short film is available actually. It's a documentary called A Journey to Jerusalem. But it was not just that moment there. It was followed by a concert on Mount Scopus, celebrating the reunification of Jerusalem. Here's a few moments of that concert.
For Lenny to play in front of the conquering troops, as it were, on land that had been Jordanian just before, was an extraordinary moment.
For me, it was something unbelievable, like a dream. When I was sitting on the stage, warming my horn, I saw the people who came there. The leader of Israel at the time, Levi Eshkol, was the prime minister, and the ex-prime minister, David Ben-Gurion, the president of the States, and Yitzhak Rabin, who was the chief of staff, Moshe Dayan, the Ministry of Defense, and all the high officers of the Israeli Defense Army, but also soldiers, wounded soldiers, who came, just to listen to the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra in Bernstein playing the Resurrection Symphony. Widows that they lost their husbands just 3 weeks ago. They came for him. It was not just a concert. It was much, much more than that. And it was so exciting, especially the last movement with the choir. And Lenny looked like an angel who conducted an orchestra and a choir of angels.
We could see how frequently Bernstein will choose the music of Gustav Mahler to express himself. You know, the singer Thomas Hampson, who worked with Bernstein, and he talks about Bernstein and Mahler in this short excerpt. Listen to this one.
Working on the Lieder eines fahrenden Gesellen. So I, all prepared. And after the first 4 bars, before the singing starts, it says above it just a bit slower, langsamer. And this is supposed to go between 63 and 60, which is, the difference between a heartbeat and a heartbeat. There's about that much difference. And so I go and all prepared. Well, now, Lenny, tell me, what are we going to do? This is exciting. It's a great moment because this is a paradox in Mahler's music that Leonard Bernstein is going to clean up for me. This is great. Lenny, how should we do this? And he looks at me and says, what? I don't understand the problem. Have you never been to a Jewish wedding? They got the yidle ladle dime time time time, and the guy comes in and he sings a little slow. Ach, wie mein Schatz Hochzeit macht yidle ladle, and we play on. He's right. He's right. It's a very simple situation. Somebody's playing the wedding music and somebody's not happy about it. I don't know anyone that sang with Lenny who didn't feel that they sang in a different dimension and consciousness, if you want to use those kinds of words, than what they were used to. And you couldn't help but grow from that.
He loved song so much and found it such an intimate.
All right, now you know that Gustav Mahler, in order to achieve the post of his dreams, which is to be the conductor of the Vienna Philharmonic and the Vienna Opera, had to convert, and he did. And but he was always remained, of course, Jewish, and his Viennese, the anti-Semites, never let him forget that. And the reaction to his first symphony, we're going to hear an excerpt from it, is really interesting. Maybe, in fact, they recognized how much he was, in fact, asserting his Yiddishkeit into the symphony. And I'll explain. The second movement is a round. It's one of the best known rounds, Frere Jacques. And they know it in German as Bruder Jakob. And everyone sings it and children sing it, and we all know how it goes. I'm good at it. All right. Now, that's the main movement. That's the main theme of the second movement of his symphony. But it doesn't sound like the Frere Jacques we know. It sounds like the music of an outsider. Other people sing that music with joy, but the outsider. Mahler described himself, these are his exact words: I am thrice homeless, as a native of Bohemia in Austria, as an Austrian amongst Germans, and as a Jew throughout the world. Everywhere an intruder, never welcome. Listen to what he does to Frere Jacques, and you'll understand that this is the music of someone looking in to the music that others can simply celebrate and enjoy in all its simplicity. There is no simplicity for Gustav Mahler. Here's the opening, and what I'd like you to notice is this movement goes on. The second theme of this music is not Frere Jacques. The second theme of this music is a Yiddish tune. I think they might have even known that when they heard it in Vienna, and maybe they resented that as well. Here's the excerpt. And now the music is going back to the beginning section. You say, well, how Yiddish is that second theme? Well, the American composer Jerry Bach, who wrote the music for Fiddler on the Roof, knew he stole it note for note and gave it to Tevye the milkman to sing. Here it is, Chaim Topol as Tevye, singing just a short excerpt in which you'll hear the same music.
I'd build a big tall house with rooms by the dozen right in the middle of the town. A fine tin roof with real wooden floors below. There would be one long staircase just going up and one even longer coming down, and one more leading nowhere just for show. I'd fill my yard with the chicks and turkeys and geese and ducks for the town to see and hear, squawking just as noisily as they can. And each loud will land like a trumpet on the ear, as if to say, here lives a wealthy man.
Well, you all know the moment that comes after that. I'm not going to play that, but you might say, well, was that the same melody? Here's a short reprise. You'll see Bernstein knows it. You will too. Here's just 30 seconds of it. Right. Now, for Bernstein to love Mahler as he did, and to love Mahler in the symphony, in the city in which Mahler had been the music director, meant he had to confront the anti-Semitism of that city. Here is his daughter. I'm going to let her introduce us to this section now of that's how Bernstein dealt with the life that he found, the culture that he found in Vienna.
He had a really complicated relationship with Vienna. It was the seat of Nazism, or one of the seats, and he never forgot that for a minute. But I think he felt some tremendous satisfaction knowing that he was seducing them in a way into accepting an unremittingly Jewish person into their lives. But the Vienna Philharmonic is incredible. And my father had his musical peak experiences with them, no question.
For the Austrian and for the German people, music is not a joy. Music is very serious. And then comes somebody and says, music is joy. And he was jumping and he was smiling and he was embracing the whole world. And so it's wonderful.
There was just this beautiful musical soul that ignited in some sort of intoxication of human spirit that we just sat mesmerized. And that's exactly what happened as a partner. I used to say to him after the few concerts I was able to do with him, especially Mahler concerts, you felt good in me tonight. because the man just sang through. He loved singing. I think that was a real regret. I mean, I believe him when he said that he really wanted to be able to sing, and he really couldn't.
He sang with his talent.
When he came, it's real, he was the first who said, you have to play it, it's your music, and so he invented Mahler for the Philharmonics.
They were the great orchestra of a city in which Mahler's music had been banned for a long time. They didn't know it. They were prejudiced against it. They thought it was blustery, over emotional, exaggerated, and it showed in the rehearsals. They resisted and resisted to a point where I did finally lose my temper, because in God's name, this was their composer from this city.
Ich weiß wohl, dass dies nur Probe ist. Aber was probieren wir? Die Noten können Sie spielen, das weiß ich. Es ist Mahler, das fehlt. Diese klagende, jedes Tremolo soll Maximum sein. In einer Hörpunkt wie 18 hier. Man kann nicht so spielen. Mahler, es geht nicht. Es ist kein Mahler. Warum probiert man? Es ist nur die Idee zu haben, aber 17. Bitte, I don't care about your 8 Stunden. Wir arbeiten oder wir arbeiten nicht. Wir werden keinen Mahler haben.
I found it very hard going. Scheisse Musik, I would hear whispers of, untranslatable word. Once they found out, however, how marvelous his music was, how incredible the response of the public was to it, they suddenly realized that they had become the vessel, the holy vessel for something holy. The contents were sacred. They were as sacred a bunch of notes as Brahms's symphonies.
In 1965, Bernstein was commissioned by the Cathedral of Chichester in England to write music for them. They gave no restrictions as to what to write, except it should be something which would be, of a religious nature. And he gave them that. He set a group of psalms. They're known today as the Chichester Psalms. And what they might not have been expecting in Chichester was that the Psalms would all be said in the original Hebrew. Now, we're going to hear an excerpt from them. I'm not going to play one of the great performances of it. I'm going to play one of the last performances he ever conducted. The reason I'm choosing this is because, in a sense, the very provincial nature of this performance is what interests me now about it. It was taking place in Poznan, in Poland. That's a $10 train ride from Warsaw. And he wanted to conduct there. He wanted to conduct his music there. He wanted to pass on a message to the Polish grandchildren of a terrible time. It was always so important in Bernstein's mind to be not just a musician, but to be able to share through the education of others what he knew and what he loved. And when he went there, I'm sure the memory was in his mind of that time in 1946, when he was led through the streets of the Warsaw Ghetto. So we're going to hear the ending of the Chichester Psalms. It uses first a section from Psalm 131, Yachel Yisrael et Adonai. And then it goes into the end of Psalm 133, which is Hine Matovu Manayim, translated, behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. And that's lines that come from the Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, this prophecy for a peaceable kingdom. And that is what Bernstein wishes to create here. This music, which beginning just on people singing, before any words at all, he's creating a peaceable kingdom and trying to share it with these children in that country, Poland. Here it is. I like to imagine that beautiful music makes people better, but I know that would be very debatable. But I'd like to think that this music made those children a little better than the generation of their grandparents were. All right, the music that we're going to hear now I don't think it's Jewish sounding at all. It isn't Jewish sounding. It isn't at all. It's a divertimento that Bernstein wrote in the 1990s. And it's based actually on a melody of Tchaikovsky's from Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony. And it's a charming, if limping, long waltz that Bernstein wrote. And why is it here in this program of his Jewish music? It's because it's his Yiddishkeit. Doesn't always have to be in the music. As we listen to this, and he is conducting the string orchestra in this music, watch Bernstein himself. He's like a Jewish grandfather, surrounded by his children, doting on them, so pleased with them, encouraging them, smiling at them. It's very Jewish. Oh,
No.
I'm sorry that went off. Oh, but it went off. It went off. That's it. This world is an imperfect place, and I'm here to prove it every day. Now, Bernstein really believed he lived only to 71. He died in 1990, and he believed in the biblical span, 70. That's what his father was given as well. He didn't expect more for himself. With all of his smoking and drinking, he had good reason not to expect more. We're going to see a moment or two of him here, just this moment in near the end of his life, trying to speak to youngsters. Notice the beauty of what he's speaking, but the difficulty he has breathing to be able to impart it to them. Here it is.
At my very advanced age, I now have to make the choice of how best to serve music and serve people through it. Should I spend whatever days the good Lord gives to me, going back to my first love, the piano? Should I just go on being a conductor? Should I devote myself only to being a composer? And I've been considering this problem because when you get to be 71, you consider such problems. And my decision has been to spend most of the remaining energy and time the Lord grants me in education and sharing as much as possible with younger people.
Lenny was a natural teacher. He couldn't help but
Before we see a funny picture coming up here with Dwight Eisenhower. Here's the reason why. And this is the last episode, the last music we're going to hear is also, really you could say, it's not Jewish music at all any more than that beautiful divertimento was. He was performing for Eisenhower and in the White House, and he performed music of Mozart and Gershwin. And Ike thanked him after the concert. And here's the way he thanked him. Now we'll look at that picture, and it will have the words of what Eisenhower said. He said, "I like that last piece you played. It's got a theme. I like music with a theme, not all them arias and barcarolles." Well, you know, Bernstein said right away, I wrote down that to use as a title someday. And he did. It was a quarter of a century later, and it was the last piece that he wrote. And what does that sound like? We're going to hear this lullaby with which it ends. There are no words. Can't say what language it's written in. There are no words. And I ask you as you listen to it, as the singers hum, just listen to this music and say, could you imagine an Irishman singing this lullaby to his children? This music. Could you imagine a German or a Frenchman or Russian? It's Lenny. It's Leonard Bernstein singing it. And it's as Jewish as you can get. Here it is. Hey everyone, I've come to the end of my talk. It's been such deep pleasure sharing this with you. I hope there is some time left and we can now share this together and your thoughts. Matt, are you out there?
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Saul, for such a wonderful and beautiful presentation, sharing all of this music. I don't know if you can see on your screen there, but there's a lot of emoji things floating up with hearts and clapping signs. A lot of people have really enjoyed the presentation. I know we're a little after 9 o'clock now, so we have time for a couple of questions here. So if anybody puts them in, we can. And those of you that need to run, you can go ahead and do so. But there's a couple of questions here just asking about your personal relationship with Bernstein and how what was he like as a teacher, and just if you want to say how and when you were a student of his, a little more about that history. People would love to know.
Oh, yes, my association with Bert, by the way, what you have to understand is it was so important in my life. It meant nothing in his life. You have to realize that he went around like a Johnny Appleseed, dropping things out which grew. And you can't expect him to remember all of the different plants that grew from him, but I'm one of them. And I know that. That is, I was actually his conducting student in the when I was 19 years old and 20 years old in the early 1950s. That was at the Tanglewood Music Festival where I was chosen as to be one of his conducting students, and it was for me, by itself, it's hard to describe the charisma that came out of this man and how easy it was to just wish, to emulate as much as possible. You could. Sometimes my conducting got a little because of Bernstein. That wasn't good. But the other thing was that I performed for him quite frequently in various pieces there and in New York in the years that followed until I left the city and moved to the Baltimore area. And so it was for me a very important. Next, only the influence of my mother as a musician was more important to me than that with Leonard Bernstein. Somebody else.
If you're willing to stick around, I'll ask a couple of more questions. Somebody asked, can you comment on Bernstein's conducting of sorry, I'm going to mispronounce it, divertimento, without using his arms?
Well, what we heard was actually an encore of a performance in which he conducted the entire suite. This divertimento is the second number in a long suite. And they went through the whole suite, and then he went off stage and applause, and then he came back again, and they wanted more music. And so, then he indicated to the players to do that second movement over again. They'd rehearsed it very, very well. And it was just his pleasure. That's what it was. Well, it was always pleasure for him conducting, but it was pleasure there just say, as if he is that grandpa say, you are my children, it's your turn. It is your turn to make music. And he just basically, he conducted with his eyes and with his, face and movement a little bit, but he really just said, it's in your hands. It was wonderful. I've seen that clip many times, and I just love him so much, and I'm in tears every time I watch that. I'm sitting here with my wife. She's seen it before also, and the two of us are just holding each other's hands while it's going on.
So nice. Yeah. As a final question, there's a few different people have asked about his Jewish identity One here is whether or not any of his descendants identify with any of his any Jewishness, and another one here. Somebody asks, I don't know if you have the if you know about this, but they ask about that he hosted leadership from the Black Panthers, and whether or not that conflicted with his Jewish identity.
I'll be able to answer each of those questions. The first one, what was the first one?
Oh, about whether his descendants.
I have no idea. I have no idea. So that's the answer to the first one. I don't know about about his children and how I can't imagine they didn't carry on who their dad was, but why? Now, the second question addresses what was that second question?
The Black Panthers.
The Black Panthers. He did not host that. His wife did. Alicia had this party for the Black Panthers, and it was in their apartment, and Bernstein walked in. He walked in there, and then therefore, whenever he walked in a room, I remember this from years back, wherever one would be, if Bernstein walked in the room, all eyes went in that direction. And he didn't have to fling a cape around or anything to do that. He just walked in the room and he was there, and you wanted to be close to him. And so that's what happened with the, so to speak, his hosting. He was not hosting it. Felicia was hosting it, but that was the event.
Thank you.
Is there time? No more time? Is there no more time?
Just time.
We could go on.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I want to give you the chance to, if you have any final thoughts about his, about his Jewish music that you want to leave us with, I didn't prepare a summation in that sense. I just wanted that final music, that sweet lullaby, to be the summation. In that, with the same way that Giuseppe Verdi, the composer, was most representative of his people and their aspirations, for to be independent, to create an independent nature. He was most effective in doing that, but he had no intention of doing that. When the music itself did that for the Italian people. And in that same way I feel with Bernstein, it wasn't like an intention to sound Jewish. It's that's who he was. That's what comes through in it. That comes through in West Side Story. That's what's there in music that has absolutely nothing to do with Judaism. It just simply is who the man was. It cannot be extricated from it. Leonard Bernstein was a Jewish musician. Thank you. I think that's a wonderful note to end on, and I really appreciate. I can see more people clapping digitally here with you sharing all of this wonderful music and experience with us this evening, and truly appreciate it. And
thank you. Every time you ask me to speak to this organization, I feel a strong link to you. For many years back, and I'm thrilled that you've asked me again.
Yeah, it's wonderful, and hopefully we'll have you again in the future. So thank you again. It's really wonderful, and thank you all out there for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. I see many people have hit the heart emoji and such on the screen. So and remember to stay in touch and check out our website for more learning opportunities, and probably an opportunity in the future again to learn with Saul. So thank you, and have a good night.
Good night.